Hi everybody. I am attempting to film this video about my end of year freakout tag for the third time after trying 2 times yesterday but not being able to complete it because there was not enough storage space on my phone. Hopefully now there will be. I have done a separate end of year freakout tag video for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR because I was reviewing different books for that TBR. Well, there is some overlap, let's be fair, but most of the books are different. The first prompt is favorite author, debut, or new to you. For the second half of the year, my favorite debut or new to me authors were Kelly Armstrong, who wrote The Haunting of Payne's Hollow, which is a modern retelling of the Legends of Sleepy Hollow. I read that book at the beginning of November upon the recommendation of Gabby Reads, who read it in her blog where she went to Sleepy Hollow with Gavin from Gavin Reads It All, and I gave it 5 stars. My other 5-star reads for November were When the Tide Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly, and let's see, The 8 Heartbreaks of Hanukkah and The Love Haters were 4.5 stars, but those were pretty close to 5. And also a book that I just finished reading a couple of days ago that was a 5-star reading for the beginning of December was The Spectacular by Fiona Davis, which crosses over with the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR because it's a historical fiction about the Radio City Rockettes, and it is on my bucket list to go to New York to either see them perform at the parade for Thanksgiving or go to New York at the beginning of December during Christmas time and see them perform. So Fiona Davis is also in this list of favorite debut or new to me authors. The next person I wanted to talk about as a famous debut or new to me author is Kate Alice Marshall. She is my favorite thriller author this year, as I have read 3 of her books: A Killing Cold, Rules for Vanishing, and oh man, what was the other one? Okay, so I can't remember the title of the third Kate Alice. What Lies in the Woods. So all 3 of those books were 4.5-star reads for me. They kept me on the edge of my seat, and I highly recommend them. The next debut or new to me author is Mary Roach, who was a nonfiction writer that was recommended to me by A Book Olive. I read Replaceable You, which is about creating artificial body parts through 3D printing, and it was very interesting and informative. Replaceable You was my pick for the nonfiction book for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it did not win, but I'm looking forward to reading the book that did win, which I forgot to write down in my notes, but I have to go back and look at it again. The next favorite debut or new to me author was Aif Shafek, who is a Turkish author. The 2 books that I read by her were 10 Hours and 38 Minutes in a Strange World, which is a story about a girl who gets murdered at a bar and stuffed in a dumpster, but she is alive for 10 minutes and 38 seconds before she passes away. And basically the first half of the book is her reflections of life before she dies, and then the second half of the book is when her friends find her in a dumpster and plan her funeral. I gave that book 3 stars, and I had a hard time getting through it because of the nature of the main character's death. And the second book that I read from this author was called The Bastard of Istanbul, which I gave 4.5 stars to. My final debut or new to me author was the thriller author Leon Zhang, who wrote Julie Chan is Dead, which was another 5-star thriller book for me that was recommended to me by Gabby Reeds. This girl focuses on a girl named Julie, who has a twin sister named Chloe. They're Chinese American. They were separated when they were younger. And Julie gets an email from Chloe to come visit her in New York City to get her out of San Francisco. And Julie is trying to get in touch with her sister, but she's not answering her phone. And that's when she realizes that she was murdered. She has to go to New York City to, like, clean out her apartment and everything. And her sister, Chloe, was a really famous social media influencer, and she was murdered probably by one of her followers. So basically, she takes over her sister's personality and takes over her social media influencing job and becomes friends with all her sister's social media influencer friends. But the person who murdered her sister is slowly killing off the rest of her friends too. So this book was intense and it kept me on the edge of my seat, and I can't wait to see what comes out next from this author. Now we're going to get into the disappointing new releases. And I'm going to talk about my first hot take for the Goodreads Choice Awards, as my first disappointing new release was the book that won the Goodreads Choice Awards for Romance, which was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. Kathleen and I read this book upon release in April for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR, and we both gave it about a 2.5 to 3-star rating, which is normally pretty good for an Emily Henry book. But the reason why it was my least favorite Emily Henry book was because the couple, Alice and Hayden, needed more development in their romance. I feel this book focused too much on, like, the competition between them with writing the article about the famous celebrity, and that plot line with the article about the famous celebrity who is a hermit seemed very similar to The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I feel like Emily Henry should have probably come up with a more original storyline than that, because I have loved every single other book she has come out with before this one. She has easily become one of my favorite romance authors in the past 2 years, but I was just extremely disappointed with this one. And I think she should not come out with a new book every single year, because her writing really suffered in this book, I'm sorry to say. The book that I think was shafted for winning the Goodreads Choice Awards was One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. That was my vote. And I love One Golden Summer is the sequel to Every Summer After. I hated Every Summer After because the couple in that group fought all the time, and I don't think they were evenly matched. So One Golden Summer focuses on Charlie, who is the best friend of the main male character in Every Summer After, Sam, and Alice. And I relate to Alice because A, she loves photography, and B, she's a people pleaser, which is a tendency I'm trying to outgrow. I just love the dynamic and the relationship growth between Charlie and Alice, and I was just able to really connect to her character a lot. And I gave One Golden Summer 5 stars. Also, a book that I felt was snubbed for the romance category for Goodreads Choice Awards was It's a Love Story, which was Annabelle Monaghan's new release from June. I love this book, and it should have been nominated over Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, which I feel is one of Ali Hazelwood's weaker books. I didn't really like the romance in this book because I think it focuses too much on sex and the couple not being able to build much of a romance beside that. My new so thank you for listening to my hot take from the Goodreads Choice Awards. The updates to this prompt for the second half of the year were not quite dead yet, which is another hot take for the Goodreads Choice Awards. So this was the mystery Not Quite Dead Yet was Holly Jackson's adult debut. She is the author of the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy, which I have really been enjoying, and I am on the third book right now, and I can't wait to see how it ends. But Not Quite Dead Yet is about this girl who woke up from a coma, and she has to and the whole story is her figuring out how she got in the coma and who tried to kill her. I just didn't really like this whole premise. I didn't really enjoy it very much, so I gave it 2.5 to 3 stars. And a book that I think should have won the mystery thriller category in its place was Vera Wong's Guide to Cheating on a Dead Man by Jessie Q. Sutanto, which is the second book in the series with Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. Vera Wong has got to be one of my favorite book characters of this year. She reminds me of Mrs. Kim from Gilmore Girls, solving mysteries and murders. I loved it. Both of those books were 4.5 stars. Not Quite Dead Yet was 3. The other disappointing new releases for the second half of the year for me were People Watching by Hannah Bonham Young. I will link the latest From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR podcast episode in the description of this video, so that way you can see my review of People Watching, because I don't want to repeat the reasons why I didn't like that book, because it would be too repetitive. My favorite new releases of the second half of the year were Alchemy of Secrets, which was Stephanie Garber's new adult release from September. And I just really, I didn't love Caravel as much as Once Upon a Broken Heart. But I was really excited for Stephanie Garber's adult release, and it didn't disappoint me. This is the start of a new adult dark academia series that takes place at a university that offers a class on urban legends, which is a really cool. I wish a class existed like that in actual colleges, because that sounds really interesting to learn about urban legends in your community. And I really liked this new character, the main character. I can't remember, Holland. I really liked her. She was a really fun main character to follow the journey of. So I can't wait to see what happens next in this series. My next favorite new release for the second half of the year was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood, which is the second book in the series with Not in Love. Not in Love was a 3-star rating, because again, that's another couple in an Ali Hazelwood book that is too sex-focused. Like Lucas and Scarlett from Deep End. And Problematic Summer Romance focuses on the brother of the main character from Not in Love. His name is Connor, and his love interest, Maya. And they have an age gap romance because they're like 10 years apart. And they travel to Italy for Connor's wedding, for Levi's wedding. And I just loved their dynamic. The buildup of their relationship was great. And this book is set in Italy on one of the islands off of Sicily. So I just love the Italian setting. 4.5 stars. And the next favorite new release is the third pick I chose in the top 3 books for the Goodreads Choice Awards for Romance, which was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This book focuses on Sam and Xavier. They have their meet cute when Sam brings her sick cat to Xavier's vet clinic, and then they go on a date. when he asks her if he wants to go on a second date, she says, "No, I'm leaving tomorrow to go back to California because my mom has dementia and I need to go help take care of her." So I love the dementia representation in this book. I think Abby Jimenez really does a good job with exploring disabilities in her book. She did a good job with this in Yours Truly in Life's Too Short, also, with anxiety and ALS. I was able to connect to this storyline because my parents went through this similar situation with taking care of both of my grandmothers, who I have talked about before, passed away from Alzheimer's/dementia in 2014 and 2021. Problematic Summer Romance and Say You'll Remember Me were my favorite new releases from the first half of the year. For the second half of the year, my favorite new releases were Bury Our Bones in a Midnight Soil, which was the Goodreads Choice Awards winner for fantasy. I liked this book a lot, but I think, like The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, it suffered from too many point of views. I liked the first point of view from modern day and the last point of view from way back in history, but the middle point of view was not necessary. Same thing for The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Both of those books were 4.5 stars for me. The next favorite new release of the second half of the year was Hemlock and Silver, which is T. Kingfisher's new release from August 19th. And this is a modern retelling of Snow White, where Snow White's dad takes her to a doctor to get the poison from the poison apple removed from her body. And this is the story about the witch who tries to cure Snow White's illness, and it was a really interesting take on Snow White that focuses on a character that is not from the movie. And let me just go on a slight tangent to talk about the Snow White live action movie that came out in March. First of all, I'm not sure if they really needed to remake Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in live action. It's not really my favorite Disney princess movie. I know it's the first movie that Disney ever made with the princess in it. So I can understand for like nostalgia purposes why they had to do that in a live action movie if they're trying to remake all of their princess movies. It's just not my favorite movie that they made. Rachel Zegler was really great as Snow White. I first saw her in the West Side Story remake in 2021, where she was also good as Maria. Her voice is very pretty, but I feel like her talent was really underutilized in Snow White, and I really hope she's in another movie soon where her voice can be better used. And I did not like the CGI dwarves. I think that using people with dwarfism as the dwarfs would have been better suited for the casting directors, as opposed to using the CGI. The final new release for the second half of the year that I enjoyed will be talked about to more detail in the holiday TBR progress section of the entertainment review video that is going to be coming out on Matt's channel on the 20th, because it is BK Borison's holiday release from this year, Good Spirits, which is a modern retelling of A Christmas Carol, which was a 5-star read for me. And I am also going to talk about other holiday books that I have been reading in the video that Matt and I do together that I enjoyed so far this December, as well as Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which is not a Christmas book, but it has a very similar character arc to Scrooge in A Christmas Carol that I want to compare. The next prompt I wanted to talk about is favorite nonfiction. The two nonfiction books that I read this year that were not mentioned in the wrap-up for Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR nonfiction wrap-up were Cooked by Michael Pollan, which is about how the four elements are connected to cooking. And then The House of My Mother, which actually won the Goodreads Choice Award for memoir, which I like. This is by the oldest sibling of the family in the show 19 Kids and Counting, and it talks about the abuse that she suffered when the show was being made and how abusive her mother was. So this book kind of also reminds me of Educated by Tara Westover, because it talks about how this girl suffered abuse from her parents. And I gave it 4.5 stars. Both Educated and The House of My Mother. My favorite thrillers for the second half of the year were Julie Chan is Dead, which I already talked about. Lost Man's Lane, which was another thriller book by a new author that was new to me this year. This book was recommended to me by Gabby, who is the master of thriller recommendations. Her and Haley Hughes have really good thriller recommendations, so if you need thriller recommendations, go subscribe to both of their channels. I will link their recent videos in the description box, so you can go check out their reviews. So Lost Man's Lane is set in Maine and focuses on this boy named Marshall who sees a girl in the back of a police car driven by a person named Maddox, but then he realizes that Maddox doesn't exist. So he tries to track down the murderer of this girl. I love this book, and I can't wait to read more from Scott Carson. Gabby said in her review that this author's writing is very similar to Stephen King's, and I agree with that. And also, one last thing I forgot to mention in my commentary about Goodreads Choice Awards for Thriller and Mystery, Freida McFadden was nominated 3 times for The Tenant, The Crash, and whatever other book she came out with this year. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But in the Bookish Unpopular Opinions video that Reading with Meg posted back in the summer, one of the bookish hot takes that was in that video was that Freida McFadden's books are not as good as they seem to be, and I think that opinion is very true, because so her new release, The Intruder was the third Freida McFadden book that was nominated for Goodreads Choice Awards. So The Crash was her release from the beginning of January, which I read. I originally gave that 5 stars, but once I had time to sit with it for a while, I realized that the plot is very, very similar to Misery by Stephen King, which is one of my favorite books by Stephen King. So that actually kind of disappointed me that the plot was so similar and she kind of copied it. So yeah, that made me change my rating of The Crash from 4.5 stars to more like 2.5 or 3, because I still liked the plot of The Crash, but I think it's kind of very similar to Misery. My other favorite thrillers for the second half of the year were The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is the same guy who wrote The Silent Patient and The Fury. The therapist from The Silent Patient makes a cameo in The Maidens, which I thought was interesting. The Maidens focuses on this woman named Victoria who gets a call from her niece Zoe, who goes to college at a local college, and her college is recently on the news because a murder takes place there. And she gets nervous because, like, her best friend died and she doesn't know who the killer is and there's somebody on the loose. So she asks her aunt, who is the main character, Victoria, to come stay at her college with her because she's, like, really scared of the murderer on the loose. This book kept me at the edge of my seat, and I don't want to spoil it in case you want to read it. You should also read The Maidens because, The Fury, because it's a murder mystery that's kind of similar to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, only set in Greece. It was fabulous. And if you like the movie Mamma Mia, you will also like The Fury because it's set on the same islands as Mamma Mia is, I think. Anyway, the final favorite thriller for the second half of the year was Ashley Winstead's new release from July called This Book Will Bury Me. This book is about a girl named Jane who has to solve her dad's murder after he suspiciously passes away. Her dad was a thriller author, so she tries to, like, find who her killer is based on people who may have given bad reviews of her dad's book. It was good. I mean, not as good as In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, but still really good. I gave This Book Will Bury Me 4 stars. Books that made you cry was the fiction writer for the Goodreads Choice Awards, My Friends by Friedrich Bachmann. All of Friedrich Bachmann's books made me cry. He's a really good writer. I have read Beartown by him and also A Man Called Ove and Anxious People, and his writing is fantastic. I highly recommend any of his books to you guys. My Friends is a coming-of-age novel that focuses about teenagers growing up in society, and, like, their main hyperfixation is this painting that was painted in the 1800s about kids going swimming in the lake or something. It's really good. I don't want to spoil too much of it for you because you should really read it to get the vibes for yourself and see what you think of the characters. 4 stars. The next category in this tag is anticipated releases for the second half of the year. I already talked about Hemlock and Silver and The Bewitching. The other new releases for the second half of 2025 that I have not yet read are Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews, Second Chance Romance by Olivia Dade, and Wildcard by Elsie Silver. Mate and Rose in Chains were both 4.4-star reads. Anticipated releases for 2026 include Just Friends by Haley Pham, The Secret Life of Briar Rose by Cindy Pham. By the way, these two booktubers are not related to each other. They just happen to have the same last name. Just in case you guys thought they were related or something. Daggerbound, which is the sequel to Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. Lies That Summon the Night. I don't have the author of that book in front of me. Dollface, which is a book that combines the plot lines of Coraline and The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I'm really excited about. I still have yet to see the Coraline movie, but I love The Nightmare Before Christmas. It is a good movie to watch either at Christmas time or Halloween time. Angus Abbott's Mystery Cat Shelter. This book is the newest release by the author who wrote the Emily Wilde Encyclopedia of Fairies trilogy, and Wendell is one of my favorite book boyfriends of the year. He's so funny. And I really love how his dynamic with Emily builds throughout the trilogy. So you need to read that trilogy. It's so good. And then The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez, which is the second book in the series with Say You'll Remember Me that focuses on two of the side characters who are friends with Xavier. Heartstopper Volume 6, which comes out on July 14th. I have loved the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman, and I also loved Solitaire, which I read further from Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR. Solitaire focuses on the older sister of Nick from Heartstopper, who reminds me of Paris Geller from Gilmore Girls. So if you like Paris, you should read Solitaire. And you should also read the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. She is a very good writer. Graceless Heart by Isabel Ibanez. This is by the same author who wrote What the River Knows and What the Library Hides. What the River Knows is set in ancient Egypt, and it just gives vibes of Indiana Jones, but it's in ancient Egypt. Our Perfect Storm, which is Carly Fortune's new release that I don't think has anything to do with the series with Every Summer After and One Golden Summer. And then Mistakes Were Made. I forgot to write down the author of that one. The final prompt in this list is favorite translated books. And my favorite translated books for the second half of the year are My Friends, Hunchback, My Brilliant Friend, and The Lying Life of Adults by Elena Ferrante, which were both 5 stars, and Walking Practice by Doki Min. This is a horror novella that was recommended to me by Gabby Reeds, and it focuses on shape-shifting aliens who invade people's bodies and take the form of people's bodies. So I read this book at the same time as 13 Ways for Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad, and I pictured one of the aliens shape-shifting into the main character of the 13 Ways for Looking at a Fat Girl to see how this alien would react to how this character. So Walking Practice was 4.5 stars. Actually, no, it was 5 stars. And then 13 Ways for Looking at a Fat Girl was 2.5 stars. Mona Awad is a very mixed bag author. Bunny was 3.5 stars. We Love You, Bunny was 2.5, and so was 13 Ways for Looking at a Fat Girl. Roog was 4 stars, and All's Well was 4.75 stars. The next questions for this prompt for this freakout tag are additional questions from Rachel Catherine's video from Katie is Reading. Anticipated 5-star reads for the second half of the year. My Friends, which is 4 stars. Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston, which was 5 stars. I still need to read the third book in the Skyland trilogy by Kennedy Ryan, Can't Get Enough, which I'm really excited about. How close are you to completing your Goodreads reading goal? I completed my Goodreads reading goal in June, right after I posted my mid-year freakout tag video. So basically, I have not been reading to add to that goal, but my goal was 300 books, and since then I probably read like 400 more books, so I probably read 700 books in total up to this point. Maybe a little bit more, because I'm still working on getting through my end-of-the-year TBRs. Series you are hoping to complete by the end of the year: Beartown, Harry Potter, which is postponed till March, and Bromance Book Club, which is postponed till February. Books you are putting off. I finally read Sunrise on Reaping by Suzanne Collins the week before Thanksgiving. I'm not really necessarily sure if Haymitch needed his own book. I'm not saying that because he wasn't my favorite character. I think he was a great mentor to Katniss, but this book made me sad because it was focused on Haymitch's alcoholism, and like when you read so many books that have similar topics to them, like for example Matthew Perry's memoir or Daisy Jones and the Six or books like that, you kind of get numb to the theme of alcoholism, and it just made me sad and it made me want to cry. I think Sunrise on a Reaping is overhyped personally. I gave it 3 stars. I know people that have given it 5 stars. I understand the emotions that you get when you read this book because I felt the same way. I just feel like 3 stars is a better rating than 5. That's my opinion, though. Feel free to disagree and share your thoughts in the comments. Any reading goals for the rest of the year? So I'm actually going to make a separate video about my reading goals that will be out on December 28th. So I will be talking about my goals for reading and just in general for 2026 and going through my 2025 goals and sharing how I have accomplished them. So that video is going to be out on December 28th at noontime. So thank you for tuning in. I hope everybody has a good weekend.